Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones, joined today from across the pond by me mucker, Shane T. Hazel. Good to see you, mate. How you doing?
Good to see you. I don't know if you're swearing at me, if you're calling me names sometimes.
It's all good, mate. Mate, it's been a while, but it doesn't feel like a while. As you were just saying, kind of off air, like, it's a crazy world, just can't keep up on it. And I feel like this whole thing, people always said to you when you're younger, like, oh, time will go so fast. And I feel like current events right now have just stuck the foot right down on the accelerator, and time is just a blur right now.
I remember years ago, I was listening to Glenn Beck. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Back in the day, he was a CNN guy. Then he left there, and I think he started his own on-demand stuff called The Blaze, which got bought out by CRT. The point is he was talking about a lot of this kind of stuff when I was waking up, probably around 2007, 2008, and they were talking about contractions, like as they were giving birth to like a new system. And obviously we all know, like with contractions, you know, the further you go along, the closer and closer you get. And it's just like right now, it feels like they are absolutely in the last stages of giving birth to what they want to be a new system. And it is pandemonium right now. And I don't think people realize how dire a situation we're in.
Mate, like, I'm a bit of a history geek. That's always kind of been my thing. And I've always thought that there's a bit of a bias with, we all have egos. We all like to think that we're kind of special and that we over egg the pudding about how special a time we live in. But I try and be as objective as I can on this. And just looking at it at the moment, I just can't think that this isn't a moment that in 100 years is going to be looked at as one of those real big points, like, you know, different to the Second World War. Don't get me wrong, but as influential as it, I think. I really kind of feel that at the moment. I do feel like there's that tipping point, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's coming. But before we get into that, mate, I want to talk a bit about current affairs because you are one of my favorite anarchists. But like, let's first talk about what you've been up to. I mean, I'm glad you're not in prison yet. That's good to see that you're not in a concentration camp or anything like that. So, you know, things could be worse. But what have you been up to since we last had a chat?
Boy, I think I ran for governor. Not sure. It just kind of went by. I think I had already run for U.S. Senate at that point, and you know, had a bone to pick with our governor here in Georgia. So I carried a grudge with COVID for about 2 years, and then let him have it on the stage with him and Stacey Abrams, both globalists and WEF Muppets. You know, so that was a lot of fun. It was one of those moments, you know, that you kind of plan for and you hope for and everything like that. And then when it kind of comes to fruition, it was a really amazing point to be able to deliver for the people that are unrepresented here in Georgia. It's about 60%. We're not allowed ballot access down ballot here. So you have 20% Republicans and 20% Democrats in the state, and they're the only people that get to vote. So, you know, we're controlled by a minority. And
how the hell does that work?
Well, it works because people believe that everybody who votes is, you know, doing their diligence, right? Doing their civic duty and their patriotic duty and all this other nonsense. And so when you believe that, and you have been conditioned by the society to believe that everybody that doesn't vote is unplugged, isn't doing their civic duty, isn't a patriot, whatever the case is, they believe that those 60% of people aren't engaged because they're schluffing their duty, right? And that's not the case. The case is that the system is so bad that most people believe it's beyond repair and don't want to take the time out of their precious lives to learn, you know, it possibly there could be a third candidate, but most of the time we're not even allowed on the down ballot races. Like if it's not a statewide race here in Georgia, you don't get to run as a libertarian. So it has to be something that everybody in Georgia can vote on. So governor, secretary of state, U.S. senator, something of that sort. So if you want to run for sheriff, if you want to run for mayor, if you want to run for city council commissioner, any of those kind of things, no, not even a starter. So it was a really cool thing to be able to get up there and highlight not only that, but a whole lot of other issues that never get talked about. And, you know, a lot of the population, that other 60% of the population that doesn't vote is right on board with it.
So just to get straight on this then. So basically, it's not that two parties just happen to get most of the votes. It's that you don't have a choice except those two parties in a lot of voting.
No, and that's across the United States for the most part, especially at the executive level for president. Now, I mean, there's no way, these people, 70, 80 million votes. Well, America's got about 330 plus million people in it. And, minus the kids that can't vote, you're talking about disengagement on a massive scale. Absolutely massive.
Someone was saying to me the other day about like, well, if you think all this stuff about politics, why don't you get involved in it? It's kind of like saying like, right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to join the mafia and I'm going to change the mafia and we're going to become like this really benevolent organization that believes in everybody having rights and like, okay, maybe I'm like over exaggerating a bit like that, but that's kind of how I feel about it. It's like asking somebody to become the thing that you hate in order to change it. And I think a lot of people probably do. We saw the same in the military. There'll be an officer who's like, I'm going to like toe the line on a few things because when I get to this position, then I'll be able to change things. But then you can't because you're in the system and then the system is very good at rooting out anybody. Like we all know, up until the rank of major, you might get somebody who's like, does his own thing, really looks after the guys, doesn't like kind of do any of the bullshit. Those people get flushed out. Like they don't get to go. The system does not promote those people because the system will protect itself. Was it the Stacey Abrams then that you kind of took? So I saw some clips of it. Was it? So you took someone apart on gun control, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. Was that Stacey Abrams, was it?
Very gently. Yes, it was. Yeah, that was Stacey Abrams. And, she knows what she's been told and has never probably touched a firearm in her life. And, she's all about, global governance. This is one of those things where when you trust the state, the largest mass murderer of all time, to be, somewhat, angelic with their power is just, it's nonsensical. Yeah, I mean, to your point, before is trying to join them is not really the purpose, right? We all know about what incentivizes politicians and it's money. But when you have somebody like myself, a libertarian here in the United States, and I'm not saying all of us, but the people that understand the game, is you're using a platform to just plant seeds. I can't tell people about civil asset forfeiture. I can't tell them about Bitcoin. I can't tell them about a lot of these things on the without this platform for, a lot of reasons until I guess now that, Twitter is mostly under Elon Musk, that we've got a free speech platform again. And to be able to say that in front of those kind of crowds and, millions and millions of people that are watching debates, that's a really big thing to be able to do. So to your point, yeah, you're not trying to join them. What you're trying to do is create a revolution through planting seeds and amongst people that are looking for somebody else to say something.
So what did you kind of learn then through the gubernatorial race? Like, did you kind of come out of it feeling like a case of optimism? You got a few more lines around your eyes than last time we talked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about not optimism for the system. I don't really think that there's...
What about for the peasants? Do the peasants have a chance, Shane?
I think we have more of a chance than we know. And I think that is the beautiful piece of this is, it's not... There's no incentive structure. And I think that's probably a good place to start. When you look at fiat currency and fiat central banks that are around the world, the incentive structure is whatever they want it to be, right? And so if they're the people paying, the people that make laws, the people that, do business, the people that have all the interests that they have, you look at, why is Al Gore of all people still relevant? Well, he's pushing this ESG, this net zero, this climate change narrative, and he does so with passion and fervor. And that's so that it helps the banks discredit things like carbon fuels and things like that will actually keep us warm and provide us energy at the lowest cost. And the reason that is because their fiat dollar at the end of the day is losing its hold in places like Saudi Arabia and other places that produce things like the petrodollar and, just petroleum in general. So if they can say, hey, listen, it's you, the commoner, the plebs out there that aren't able to, use petrol anymore, then you've got to start using things like wind and solar and things like that. And you start to see the failing ESG type of grids and system and all of these people. What you start to understand is the incentive to push guys like Greta Thunberg and Al Gore and these people is by the central bank. So the central banks control incentive structure so that they can push whatever they need to push as their fiat money becomes, worthless over time. And so now what we're seeing is this fiat incentive structure starting to crumble. The American empire is on its way out now, and I think it's fairly relevant for anybody who's paying attention and being honest with themselves. So I think what I've learned out of all of this is, there's another system out there. You can introduce people to it. You can get out peacefully. I don't think these guys are going out without, a fight, which I think, we'll cover later. But we are in those times that we wish maybe we weren't, some of us. But yeah, it's a pretty incredible time to be alive and watch the American empire fall. I should say a lot of the central banking cabals fall at the same time. I think that's probably what we're going to gain out of all of this.
I think it's about time the empire crumbled for America, you dirty turncoats. You've had you've had your moment in the sun. It's time for us to rise again.
We fucked it up.
Really, yeah, mate. It's the I think this one with climate change. I think it's something that kind of gets overlooked in it. Because I'm someone that, for me, I don't need to know if the climate change thing is correct or if it's incorrect. What matters to me more is what are the consequences of these changes, right? Because whether it's incorrect or correct doesn't really matter. What matters is if these changes are made, what are the consequences? Basically, what we're asking people to do in the West is everyone that's in poverty around the world, we're basically saying, hey, you know how we were allowed to climb out of poverty in our countries? Well, bad news. Fuck you guys. You're going to stay extremely poor, maybe dead. And because we think that because some people are saying that in the future, some people will die, we want you to die right now. And you better do that for us. And that to me is the big thing here is just this basically condemning huge fucking parts of the population, of the global population, to continuously living in extreme poverty.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at what we've done here in the States. I think it was about $8 trillion over the past couple of years that we printed. That debases everybody in places like Africa, South America, the global South, in other words, right? When you start if their economy is based on a Federal Reserve currency, and now you print trillions of dollars, not only are you saying, screw the money that you have, that it was so hard to get in the first place, because now we're going to debase that. And now you're going to be poorer than ever, and your life savings are nil. Not to mention, by the way, go in and get into the mines for, the lithium for our, subsidized cars and everything else. So we're going to be so green make sure your kids are there, make sure you're extracting this stuff and polluting your rivers and your landscapes and everything else, because that's what the West is demanding right now. And it's absolutely nuts. I'll tell you, I'll get on a rip about Bitcoin, about this kind of stuff for that exact reason. I'll go way too long, but the hope that I see for places in Africa that are adopting Bitcoin now, places around the world that have seen their money just collapse overnight because of interest rates, because of printing, you name it, whether it's Argentina, whether it's, places in Africa, whatever it is, you're starting to see a lot of these people transact in Bitcoin. And for the first time, there's a lot of hope for them because they can't be annihilated in swaths of millions by the federal banking cartels.
It looks like Bitcoin has bounced back a little bit recently as well, the last kind of week or two, a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think we're borderline 23,000 American right now. And, that's up over 16 where we've been hovering for, a few months.
Would you say at this point, it kind of, it stood the test? This the last couple of years have been the real kind of test of whether or not this whole thing is going to be a long-term solution.
I think for the average person out there, maybe that they're beginning to see this as just that, is maybe Bitcoin, and there is something to it, which is great. For us Bitcoin maximalists that are toxic to everybody, right? It's hey, this is a mathematical certainty. If you understand Keynesian and Austrian economics, you understand what's happening right now. And if you understand what all the other crypto is in terms of noise, of being like a shitcoin casino where everybody goes, oh, look, I've got this. And you see guys like Sam Bankman-Fried, walk out with $300 billion or whatever it was, just astronomical amounts.
So the FTX guy, was that?
Yeah, FTX. Yeah. Who was messing, had his own coin, FTT. And you're looking at this and you're going, yeah, we've seen this all along. If you don't have something that doesn't have rulers, then you're somewhere you're centralized, whether it's a person, whether it's a board, whatever it is. And Bitcoin is none of those things. Bitcoin is just a code that's backed by energy and decentralized network and positive incentive structures. So when you understand it down to its core level, yeah, this is not only, the test where we see the decoupling from, things like the S&P and the rest of this, but you're starting to see where money is going to go. And there's a great old saying that money doesn't wait, right? Money moves. And now that you're seeing the foreign exchanges implode, you're seeing the banks implode, you're seeing the stock markets implode, all of these things, and the US dollar going to complete crap, you're going to start to see more and more. And I think very soon you're going to see some giants, like, not that they're good guys, but they're gonna hedge and they're gonna throw money into it. Guys like State Street, BlackRock, and the rest of these giant financial firms that are basically the front faces for the Federal Reserve.
Because wasn't that starting to happen a couple of years ago? A lot of these big hedge funds were starting to buy when Bitcoin was really peaking before. Wasn't that kind of part of the reason why at the time that you had a lot of these kind of Wall Street kind of guys getting?
Yeah, you had a lot of speculation. There was talks about doing ETFs for Bitcoin and all those things. And yeah, I don't think it was widely understood even at that point. I think there was an opportunity for some, people that have played the stock market for a very long time to capitalize on a moment when they saw what they'll call a moon event, right? Where you just got these giant green candles and they're making people absolutely filthy rich if they're, well vested in it. But outside of that, there's usually corrections, right? And that's the cool thing about Bitcoin is there is an audit every 10 minutes. And so when you see that audit being done every 10 minutes, what's happening and what people will talk about is, well, why is it so volatile? Well, it's correcting course. There's always an adjustment for the amount of Bitcoin that are put out. There's a halving rate every 4 years. This is what's called the difficulty adjustment, but this is just something that is natural, and you start to see the pattern over the years. And what happens with Bitcoin is you'll see a spike and you'll see it come down, and you'll see a spike and you'll see it come down. But once we get to that mark where we're at about a $10 trillion cap, like say gold, when we're at a market cap of about $10 trillion, what you're not going to see is fluctuation. What you're going to see is people with understanding. Money moves through gold. You don't see, these large fluctuations. It's just because your pie is bigger versus, the little increments that are going on.
Right. You mentioned Austrian economics, and there's been a lot of other words in here that hurt my monkey head. If somebody wanted to read more about this, kind of start building their basis about the economics and stuff, where would you kind of signpost them to?
Yeah. So there's some really, really fantastic books. One that's very interesting, and I actually recommend them in reverse order that they were published. The guy named Safadin Amos. He is one of the best minds of Bitcoin. He wrote the Bitcoin standard, and he also wrote the fiat standard. And I think the fiat standard is the better place to start for most people, because you need to understand where you're at. You need to understand the system that you're in. From the agriculture, the dirt, to the food that's being produced and what's being grown, and how that's been affected throughout time because of fiat incentives. This all, starts to, come to a head as you get through the book, and you're like, oh my God, this destroys your land. This destroys everything that it touches. And that's the thing is, as a third party type of technology that fiat currency is, it is the third party in every transaction, which doesn't make any sense. It's a corruption. It's a virus that has got itself into us and gone septic. So when you start to understand that we live in a septic system and we have to get to a pure system where if you and me, we want to do some trade for services or some sort of products, we can do that. And we don't need a third party to do that, especially based in debt, which is exactly what Federal Reserve dollars are, right? So read that, read the Bitcoin standard. I definitely recommend a lot of Rothbard. Rothbard is just old Austrian economy, understanding that real value comes from savings, not debt, not spending. If you want to understand more about Bitcoin as well and its history, the bullish case for Bitcoin by a guy named BJ Beauparte, I think is how you say his last name. It's close to that. Don't quote me, but the bullish case for Bitcoin. There's so much out there. Bitcoin Magazine's got a ton of great articles, current events, culture, business, you name it. So a lot of places like that you can go and study up.
All right, guys, not going to lie to you. This is about the 25th time I've attempted to do this capitalist segment of the thing. Today's episode is brought to you by Combat Fuel. Combat Fuel, if you're in the military and you want some sports supplements, Combat Fuel are your guys. Everything is done through Informed Sports, so you don't have to worry about that. If you're a civilian and you just want something for pre-workouts or to support your gains or to just support your well-being, everything from cod liver oil, multivitamins, everything like that. I'm going to keep this one nice and short and simple, guys, because my brain is absolutely melted. So what I will say is use the code VSOM at checkout and you will get yourself juicy discount for your juicy gains. Also want to say massive thank you to Zulu Alpha Straps. Hopefully they made it back from Vegas in one piece. They were out there recently at SHOT Show showcasing their Ali Watt straps for Ali blokes. If you are serving in the military, if you are in any kind of job that involves ruggedness and requires a rugged, hard-wearing watch strap, then check out Zulu Alpha Straps. If you're just a bit of a watch aficionado, if you don't know what that word is, look it up in the dictionary, then Zulu Alpha Straps are the people for you. They are veteran-owned, veteran-operated. They support this podcast and make it possible. So, if you like coming here and listening to the show, then how about squaring away Zulu Alpha Straps with a purchase? I'm sure you got someone in your life that requires a good strap, so give it to them with a Zulu Alpha one. Right, let's talk about war. Since we were last on, Russia invaded Ukraine. I think we talked about before about how we kind of, I think you and me are both kind of aligned with the thing of obviously we don't agree with Russia's actions, but we definitely both think that or I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I'm pretty sure if I remember our conversations correctly, that NATO provocation has been a massive part of this. What have you thought about like these kind of the events unfolding and continuing to unfold in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think it's to your point, the provocation by NATO. Some people will be like, well, it's NATO. And the thing is you have to look at kind of the history of NATO and what the agreements were when NATO was stood up. We weren't supposed to go west very far. We were supposed to stay out of a lot of the Baltic territory and the Eastern Bloc. And sure as shit, we just kept having other nations join NATO in terms of, getting on the border of Russia. I think Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, you name it. I know Ukraine was never adopted, by NATO and is not part of NATO currently. So this encroachment, this moving NATO towards Russia, I think has done, exactly what it is. And for the banks, no less, because Russia isn't part of the global banking system. It's not, it's not part of those bankers. It's got its own corrupt banking system. So, but yeah, this whole thing where we've been sending, tens of billions of dollars a pop every time we turn around to Ukraine, the fact that they've got unidentified parts of the Ukrainian army as Nazi, and you're just like, good Lord, what the hell are we doing? I don't think most people understand really what the implications are here, because we're getting to that point where, if we're sending tanks now to the border, we're going to send 30 something tanks to Ukraine and then have them maintained and help these guys out even more. Listen, I mean, it's not a good thing. I think this is one of those provocations and one of those moments where you sit back and you go, we've spent this much money now and Putin's gearing up for an offensive. I mean, he's going to bring 500,000 more troops that he's conscripted down there to die for, Mother Russia. And I don't think NATO wants to lose that fight. I don't think they want to have that black eye. I don't think they want to do that. And if anybody really understands history, go back and look at history, what it took before to put Russia in its place. It was hundreds of thousands of forces that, I don't think people have the appetite for now. I mean, those were boys. I mean, let's face it, we're old ass men compared to the young guys that are in there now. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. It's we've got a Muppet for a commander-in-chief here in the U.S. who's senile and old and obviously not calling the shots. He's just being, fed whatever, they need him to say, and he gets up there and he says it. So this is something I hope everybody is rallying around together and saying, hey, we can't do this. We've got to stop. If that part of Ukraine falls to Russia, sorry, guys, we can't risk a global world war at this point. No way.
Yeah, I kind of think the same. I mean, I obviously want people to have individual kind of self-determination, but this is like, I feel like the Ukraine kind of conflict has just thrown up so many obvious hypocrisies from government. People of Ukraine have the right to self-defense. Right, can I carry a firearm? No. All right. The people of Ukraine have the right to determine who controls them and all this kind of stuff. Right, can I make my own decisions? No. It's just really kind of thrown up the total hypocrisy of governments like Britain and the US, where we're saying that we have to go and protect democracy. Meanwhile, you've got I would argue against the idea that Ukraine is a free democracy anyway. And so I just argue against I'd argue against the idea that any country is. But then, you've got this whole thing of just stripping away over the last few years more and more rights of our own people, and then saying that we need to risk nuclear holocaust for someone else. And just come out and say it. If you want to say, well, look, we want to maintain, our empire's crumbling. We're going to try and use this as an opportunity to regain some momentum and make a lot of money. Fucking say it. Like, Roman Empire didn't come out and say, oh, we're doing this for the good of other people. They just said, we're doing it because we want to fucking do it. I just think, you've got to look at the correlation, the timeline as well. We leave Afghanistan because you're like, well, fucking hell, because there's a lot of money being made here. And then all of a sudden, I don't think it's a coincidence then that there's a new war kind of sparks up. And what I would say is a case for optimism maybe, we were willing to take a black eye in Iraq and say we fucked this up and just left. We were willing to take a black eye in Afghanistan and say we fucked this up and just left. Because I don't think that the people who are kind of calling the shots here actually give a fuck about honor and integrity or anything like that. They care about money. So once it gets to the point where it's like, look, reconstruction at this point is more valuable than armament because we've depleted our stocks. Every country in fucking NATO right now and other countries are putting in orders for more F-16s, more tanks, more this, more that. They've generated the orders they need now to keep this fucking money machine going, the military industrial complex for decades. They've secured that. So and I saw a tweet earlier from the BlackRock CEO saying it's going to cost something like $750 billion to rebuild, Ukraine. And that's as things stand right now. I'm kind of hoping that, and I mean, it's a disgusting thing to hope, but I'm kind of just hoping that at some point they make the decision of right, now is the time to play this hand, and now we start the reconstruction hand. I don't know.
You don't hear peace from a lot of these guys, and that's the thing is no talks of peace. It's mind-boggling. I think another tell for me is you've got guys like Al Gore down at WEF last week who goes on this tirade. I don't know if you heard his speech or not, but he talked about 60,000 Hiroshima-sized bombs being exploded every day, boiling the oceans. He was talking about the xenophobia. He's in this century, we're predicting that when we're talking about millions of people crossing borders now, it'll be billions within the century. As he's saying this, he says something to the effect of, this will destroy our ability for self-governance. I think this was a message, right? And I think this is what he wants. I think this is how he sees it. And I think this is how a lot of the global elite see it. If you start a nuclear war as the banks and everything is melting down, that these guys are solely invested in fiat dollars. If this starts and they get the chance to see millions, if not billions of people crossing borders, this is now their opportunity to sit there and say, hey, listen, it's time for a global governance. It's time for CBDCs. It's time for these, checks in their, the camps and whatever else. And I really think that that's what these people want. None of them are saying there's too little population. Most of them want less of a population. People want to see decreasing birth rates in those circles. So I'm not so hopeful there. What gives me hope is people. And what I have seen over and over and over again, and actually there's a really interesting lady, I forget what her name is, out of Ireland, has been making some very astute speeches inside of the EU the past few months talking about this war. We're not calling for, war crimes against Barack Obama or George Bush or any of these other people. If we're calling for war crimes against Putin and the rest of them, well, let's be serious and do it all. But I think the people are actually on our side here, and they're like, man, no, there's no way we're going and we're starting World War III. I think most people are against it now.
Judging by the amount of listeners we lost on this podcast when I started saying that we shouldn't be at war, I think that the majority of people here support the war and want it to continue.
In the UK, no kidding.
Yeah, people are really bought into the idea that, look, it does my head in that I have to keep repeating this. Putin, bad. Russian government, bad, right? Bad.
So binary, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
they are all mobsters and they don't give a shit about you.
Right. And look, I mean, I wish it was the case, but I'm not willing to risk my fucking country being annihilated by nukes to decide who controls the Donbass region. No. Like, and then I've said before, I have like a lot of respect for guys who have picked up their kit and gone from America or Britain or wherever and gone to fight there. I respect those guys. I don't agree with the decision, but I respect them because they put their money where their mouth is. And so I respect that, but like, I just think that like, well, one, just who the fuck are we to talk about invading sovereign countries? I mean, for one, like, so just the track record of just like people see, like this whole thing started in February, like 4 or 5 months before we were abandoning Afghanistan after 20 years of, I'm like, you know what it is, mate? It's like when someone has got that, they're with that partner and that partner is going out and getting fucked left, right and center by all the town every week. And they go, well, I know she did that last time, but she says she's changed. It's like, has she really changed? Because she's been doing this every week for like that you've been with her. And I just feel like this, it's just kind of like this naive optimism of, yeah, but this time will be different. Will it? Doesn't like the track record says it won't be. And I'd love to be wrong on it. I'm sure you would be too. I'm sure we both love to be proved wrong. But like, the record is the record.
Yeah, we're in 120 something countries around the world as the U.S., right? We have operations going on all over the Horn of Africa, all over the eastern part of Africa, still doing proxy stuff in Yemen with, Saudi and I think the UAE. Like, we're not the good guys here, ladies and gents. And like you said, you've got this partner. It's a great analogy. You've got this partner who's going out and banging the neighborhood. And at the same time, you're like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm going to go out there and get with this, other woman. And you do it once. And now she's like, you bastard, right? Like, no, we definitely don't have any legs to stand on. And, in terms of Putin, it's just, I think all of these monsters need to be brought to justice. I think they've got enough power and sway as they're not going to be, pushed that way. And to your point earlier too, with all these contracts being awarded to the defense industries for, new fighters, new tanks, all this kind of stuff, what's really interesting, especially here in the States, and I imagine it's maybe even more so in the UK and Europe, is that a lot of these organizations, they got rid of people who would not take a vaccine over the past couple of years, right? And so what do you have? You've got the same type of people that are in the upper echelon of the military because they're yes men and yes women. And so these people, they got rid of a lot of their very competent people. So what's going to happen? I think there's going to be a lot of default in terms of, fulfilling military contracts. I think you've got the military industrial complex probably going about the same route as these banks, because at some point they're going to fail. You cannot get rid of, I think, some of your best and brightest people who say, I'm a little more cognizant of what I'm going to be putting in my body. I'm not going to, just blindly go out on a limb and tell, take this because my government said so. And if you want to fire me, I guess, okay, my health is more important. If that's who's running these companies, if that's who's employed at these companies, and the turnover rate, which I know firsthand is absolutely through the roof. We're talking almost 20-something% for a lot of these companies. A normal turnover rate for a company on the high side is about 3%. Think about that for just it. I mean, if that's what's going on in these companies are crumbling. If they're downsizing, they're crumbling. If they're firing people, if they've got giant turnover rates, if they're not able to fulfill contracts, these companies are also crumbling. So in terms of, having them move on for the next 8, 9, 10 years because we printed God knows how much money, well, they might have a lot of money, but it might actually be very worthless.
Yeah, I saw something the other day as military recruiting numbers here are down 30% on last year, and the people leaving is up 17%.
What do you think of conscription at this point? You think they're going to have to do something like that?
So I think conscription in the UK, and this is one of those things where it kind of comes down to that. It's like taxes, right? You know, if you had an opt-in box to actually pay tax, because like right now, you know, in the UK, we'd be like, yeah, I support the NHS. Say he said to you, right, you can keep that fucking money in your pocket. Most people are going to say, give me the money. So it's the same with kind of conscription. Like, if it's like, yeah, we want to support the war in Ukraine or whatever. It's like, okay, well, instead of just letting Ukrainians die to benefit America and Britain and Western countries in a proxy war, your son has to go and die. Well, no, I don't want to do it then. Okay, well, then let's not do it. I think like I think if conscript, there's just no way that it would happen in Britain. There's absolutely no way. I mean, I think in America, it was a very real possibility under the neocons with in the Iraq war, and that's why they had these massive. Basically, there's more private contractors in Iraq than there was soldiers. It was this army that no one in the civilian world really knows about. It was essentially a taxpayer-funded army. That was an army essentially paid for by the taxpayer, but allowed them to get around conscription. And I think we've seen it with like Wagner Group and stuff in Ukraine. I think the rise of mercenary armies is probably, is continuing to happen. And I think proxy wars, I think America now has learned the lesson with Iraq and Afghanistan that the best way for them to fight wars is for letting other countries' people die, and they supply the equipment. I think that's kind of the way that things are going to be going.
It's a nice money laundering program too for them, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, and maybe you've covered this in other shows, but when you know, this whole circular, you know, talk here is we've got FTX who laundered money for the Democrats, gave them money back. And then on top of it, what you also have is this, you know, purchasement of military equipment. So here in the States, you've got the Patriot missile system being trained on by Ukrainians in Missouri, and the Ukrainians, you know, that are paying those guys at Raytheon, the big bucks to make these systems. And then the head guys at Raytheon go ahead and make sure that those people get reelected so that they can get more and more money back. It's just a giant money laundering system. And they love this kind of stuff.
Well, I think it says it all that when there was, I think it was Rand Paul, was it, that tried to pass that bill that they have to actually do accounting for where the money was going, and it was voted against. Like, why wouldn't you want to know if you're giving hundreds of billions of dollars? Would you not want to know where it's going?
Plausible deniability, my friend.
But like that just says everything, though, right? It's like, you know, I read these articles from guys on the front line, like Western volunteers and stuff, saying like, yeah, like our commanders are just selling the weapons. Like, they're selling the weapons off. It's like, oh no, really? Corruption in Eastern Europe? Who would have thought it? Could never saw this coming.
And they're fucking off to places like Davos and Geneva, buying houses on the slopes. And it's just, yeah, it's gross.
It is, mate. And this is why I get fucking annoyed with people, because I'm just like, you have to be really trying hard not to see it right now. Davos saying the other day, I was thinking this whole thing, like, you wouldn't go out and hire a personal trainer who's 20 stone overweight. So why would you listen to climate change talk from someone that flies a private jet?
And eats meat and lives a very luxurious life. Huge carbon. It's not that it's just, oh no, we're paying that off. We're paying for it. And that's the thing is, you know, if you have enough money, you can pollute all you want, is what they're saying. Oh yeah, just become rich. You'll be fine. You can do everything that we do. The rest of you peasants, go ahead and get in the cube, eat the bugs, you know, own nothing, be happy.
But if you believe the danger, if you truly believed that was a global danger and you had kids and stuff, you'd act like you believed the danger. The fact that they don't do it really undermines to me the idea that they actually think that there is fucking danger at whatsoever.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean,
you wouldn't be buying beachfront property like Nancy Pelosi buying beachfront properties in Florida, you know, a meter away from the beach and stuff. It's like, oh, yeah, oceans are going to wash away Florida. Now let me buy this new property right on the beach.
Barack Obama's house in Maryland, I believe, is where it's at now. Martha's Vineyard. It is literally 3 feet, 1 meter above sea level. And then he just had a house built on the coast in Hawaii as well. You know, for this crowd that claims that what they're doing, I think, is just running off the poor people so that they can buy more and more beachfront property at the best price possible. And I really, for the life of me, while making a mint doing it, I think that's exactly what they're doing. And this whole Davos thing, man, telling you exactly what they want to do. I mean, they're just straight out saying, hey, I'll tell you what does interest me out of Davos is this talk about a cybersecurity attack, not only attack, but catastrophic attack on the power grids. We saw Pakistan go down the other day. You guys were in the news, I guess, because now they're asking people to turn off their power from 5 to 6 p.m. at night to help, push down and help the grid out, I guess, a little bit. And I don't know. There's this amazing book. It's called 1 Second After. When Klaus Schwab is talking about catastrophic power outages that will make COVID look like a daydream. And this is something I think people should pay attention to. There's also their cyber panel that said the same thing. Within the next 2 years, the probability of a catastrophic cyber attack is just through the roof. And if you haven't read this book, it's called 1 Second After. You get a real kick out of it. You may even move here to the States up here in Appalachia, stand with me. But it talks about an EMP, basically, which would be the same effect of a catastrophic cyber attack on the grids. You lose power for a day, a week, things happen. And after about a month of no power, the billions, I think, of people, not only here in the States, but around the world, like you're talking about catastrophic numbers of deaths. I mean, it would be unbelievable. It's
kind of like what we were talking about earlier, though, with the fossil fuels. You get rid of fossil fuels, it causes deaths in poverty because people haven't got the energy and the means to kind of live by, because because the thing is, we haven't got these replacements for fossil fuels. So if you bring in these arbitrary levels and then enforce them, which is what government likes to do, then people will fucking perish in between. But again, mate, this double standard, what they're saying, they're like, right, we're really worried about a catastrophic cyber attack and the electricity grid going down. So we want to get rid of all fossil fuels and rely on electricity from other kind of sources. Like, we don't want you burning wood or coal or having gas or anything like that. We want to put all our eggs in this one basket, which we're telling you is very easily smashed. Like, again, it's just like, well, hang on, this doesn't seem to make any sense. What I love about the World Economic Forum, though, you can just take something that they've said verbatim, repeat it, and it's so nuts and so dystopian that people will go, that's a fucking conspiracy theory. But when the person says it in the suit, they're like, well, no, it's not a conspiracy theory. But what they say is so fucking evil and maniacal that, like, when you repeat it, people won't believe you that that's what they said. Like, and these people as well, like, you couldn't pick better looking Bond villains than these fuckers. And they're in their fucking Swiss mansions and they're like everything.
Oh, yeah, right.
They're so evil looking. I'm like, this has to be like some kind of simulation joke that's being run on us. It has to be.
We're all at everybody that's alive right now, and maybe everybody who's plugged into the simulation, right? This is the culmination of the entire thing. Is everybody goes out, we lose to the machines, and that's it. Everybody's plugged in, and it just starts over again, right? Like that's the storyline. You're right, man. They are some very evil bastards over there. And the thing, I've gotten kind of past the hypocrisy is par for the course these days. The interest for me lies in the solution and this middle finger that Bitcoin is to everybody that is a Davos, a banker, a politician, the tycoons of industry that, are supported by our tax dollars, like zombie corporations. This is what excites me right now. This is my hope. This is the light in the darkness for everybody is just, hey man, go learn Bitcoin. Maybe get a little, and if it all works out, you're rich, right? Like that's the thing is because 21 million forever, that's it. And it's actually deflationary because at some point people are going to lose their keys. They're going to lose their Bitcoin. And if there's less of it, it means it's more valuable in the future. The fact that we have a halving every 4 years. So we'll go from like 6.25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes being awarded to the miners down to like 3.1 here in the next, I think it's 2024 somewhere. It is 2024. So we'll see a halving. What we're going to see, it's just less Bitcoin available over time for people. So somebody was saying the other day that 0.1 Bitcoin is the new elite. And then you think about it this way, right?
I'm an elite. I'm in there.
Yeah. 21 million Bitcoin on the planet. There are 45 million millionaires. Most millionaires will not have an entire Bitcoin. Yeah.
I could buy more Bitcoin when I get home.
It's on sale.
What should I do with Ethereum and XRP? Should I just convert it to Bitcoin?
Oh, get the fuck out of it, man. It's all going to zero. Ethereum is now WEF. So, and XRP is a stable coin that's pegged to the US dollar.
All right, sweet. I mean, I'm putting it all on red or whatever we are.
All on red.
Right, mate, let's talk about what you're up to these days when you're not, trying to bring down the lizard people.
Still trying to bring down the lizard. So,
well, in your spare time.
Even in my spare time. So man, I started this program called Brave. It's a post-traumatic stress program. And oh man, I got to tell you, it is some magical stuff. You got to come and do it. So, a couple of guys, me, whatever, we'll go out, and I live out here in the middle of nowhere in North Georgia. There's about 2,000 acres of untouched national Cherokee forest. Like there are literally giant stones on the ridge behind me that shouldn't be there. And it's not yet been discovered, but the earth below it is not the same as the stones. And so you're looking at these giant stones that have weathered North Georgia summers and winters for eons. And there's bent trees that are everywhere. Just a bent tree is something that was touched by a Native American here a long time ago, 400 or 500 years ago. It would point the way to something significant. And a lot of times they had engravings and everything else on them. So you'll see these trees that look like the figure 4. This really abnormal adaptation. And if you know what you're looking for, this place is littered with them. So what we do is we'll take guys out and about 2.5 grams of psilocybin, and we'll start to work. We have these mornings in the fall and in the spring, and sometimes in the winter. We're going out this Saturday again and doing work with people with post-traumatic stress. Doesn't have to just be vets. There's plenty of people out there that have lost children or whatever have you, and they're struggling. They're struggling with their faith. They're struggling with what life is, what the purpose is. What's here, what's beyond. And you get to show them something. And I know, for a fact that you've kind of been down these paths, but this is one of those paths where when you do this in the style that we're doing it, you go out before dawn and you have your trip in the darkness and the woods, and you get plugged into the earth. And, if you know anything about energy and, mycelia and everything else, it's there and you're there. And these trees that are plugged in to the mycelia and, acting like antennas and everything else. And this might sound nuts to some people. It would have sounded nuts to me about 5 years ago. So you get these guys plugged in and you go through phase 1, which is the giant trip. And, for the first trip, 2.5 grams is pretty good. But then, you come out into phase 2 and you start to see the sunrise as you're coming out, you're being reborn, you've got the reset going on, and you start dealing with some things and you start having this fraternity, this understanding, something I think, some guys pretty important to history did back in the day, where they started evangelizing the mysteries of the universe together. And they started being okay with what life is and what life, wasn't, and what this is in terms of being a human being. And it deals with a lot of post-traumatic stress because they get to do some things like forgiving themselves. When you allow yourself to forgive yourself and you start to see what happened, and we've talked about this in the past, the corruption of the system that is the indoctrination system that tells you at 5, hey, listen, you need to run off and go to war. You need to go do these things for your country. You need to do all of these things because this is what patriotism is. This is what nationalism is. This is what's going to make your ancestors proud. All of these silly things that corrupt the warrior spirit and really the warrior class. And we start correcting those things. We start to go, hey, man, you didn't even have a chance. You had weapons grade indoctrination at age 5. Let it go. Do something new. Figure it out. Help other people not make the same mistakes. And you start to show these guys exactly what it is. And honestly, Bitcoin even works into this, brother. And it's crazy because when you start to see how and ask the question, how do you take this experience? How do you take this amazing, mystical, magical, loving, peaceful, joyful experience to the world? How do you show them what you did? When you do that, the whole thing now is, how do you show it to people? The only thing that you're left with is you can't take the beauty. You can't take this moment. You can't take any of that kind of stuff. The only thing you can take with you is love. And love, if you could codify it, is Bitcoin. Why? Because With Bitcoin, now what I get to do is sit here and say, hey man, I will love my fellow human being enough to leave them alone, to not force or coerce them into anything. I actually have a code here that if we plug it into the human population and we go, hey, listen, this allows you to transact with who you want and not with who you don't want. This allows you to not be forced and coerced into actions. This helps you keep your money in your property. And at the least, it allows you to love your fellow human beings enough to leave them alone. But this trip is, one of those things where this is a lifelong commitment now. This is one of those things where now that we're doing this, I've got guys, peace, brother. What's up? In a text. How are you doing? What's going on? Man, I cannot stop thinking about, going back out and doing something. And so I just got one right there. This epic type of, resurgence of a faith and a discipline and just a practice that's been lost and demonized and criminalized over the past 100 years, especially. When you start to look at it and you see what it is and how powerful it is and how you can evangelize this, and you can move around and you can go to other different spots on the earth that are natural and still and inspired and sacred, you start to have this real appreciation for not only, what this is, but also history. And that's, part of why I've seen what I've seen out back here. It's because you go spend time in nature. You go see how the guys before you did it. This hunters class, this warrior class that was before us would meet. Different villages would meet at this place. They'd hunt. They'd share stories. They'd trip their balls off and go out and become men, and then come back. And that was something that I think has absolutely been lost. If we've got generations of men that are going out now and, reinstituting this type of behavior, that not only is like psilocybin and cannabis not bad, it's actually a tool that'll help you. It'll help not only you, but it'll help the human species in terms of getting along, avoiding war, creating more peace, creating more joy, the basics of life. And what the ancients used to call the glue of society, the glue of humanity that helps you put away your own ego and start seeing other people and possibly, from their point of view sometimes. Give them a little grace.
I've got it downloaded for next time I do a trip. That's like called the immortality key, is it, or something?
Oh, so good.
Because you mentioned it last time, and so I re-listened to our podcast from the last one we did, and I was like, right, I'm going to get that. So I've got that downloaded for next time. And by trip, I mean like a drive in the car, not like tripping my balls off.
I was going to say, you don't want to listen to that one.
Although doing that in the forest in Georgia sounds fucking dope.
You got an open invite.
Thank you, brother. I'm going to take you up on that, mate. Like, obviously, not that me and Shane would condone anything criminal, but just, we would never condone that. This is all hypotheticals. But no, mate, that sounds amazing, bro. And we'll definitely have a chat about that. But I'm a big supporter and believer of what you're doing. I know there's starting to get traction over here as well, mate. I think the genie's getting out the bottle that this is safe. And they talk about safe and effective, right? That's one of their favorite terms. Well, fuck me. Psilocybin is about as safe and effective as it comes. Now, obviously, with anything, I'll put this disclaimer in there, there's a possibility for misuse, the same as anything. But say the same thing about your hands. What are you going to do? Criminalize hands. You could do a lot of good with them, or you could use them to strangle someone. But maybe that's consensual. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, bro. But mate, thank you so much. Are you still keeping the radical pod going and everything like that? You still got the weekly shows coming in?
Yeah, 2-3 times a week now.
3 times a week. Holy shit.
I know, man. It's crazy. I got to talk about this kind of stuff. I got to get it out of my system. It's cathartic. You know how it is. You get in front of this microphone, you talk to great guys here and over the pond and kind of figure out, hey, God, we're kind of all the same. And just kind of really just want to be left the fuck alone. Yeah, Radical is still up and running, man. I appreciate you having me. It's always a blast hanging out with you. And obviously, I'm going to bring you over here and do some things. Maybe even a live show after we get done going on a trip.
Oh, awesome. Well, bro, thanks so much for today, mate. We're out of time, unfortunately. I could chat about this stuff for hours, but we will let people know where they can find you on social media. Have you got a separate thing going on for Brave, or is that all through your kind of through your Shane Hazel social media?
So, yeah, right now, if people want to help me with Brave, you can donate through Cash App at Shane Hazel. It's just $ Shane Hazel. You can help me there. The 501c3, we got to jump through all sorts of tax loops and everything like that and get accredited for what we're doing. So it'll be up very soon for Brave, and it'll be linked at radicalpod.com. But yeah, the website's there. If your listeners aren't aware, there's this new really cool program or app that's working. Actually, guys out of the UK, it's called Fountain FM. You can actually earn Bitcoin while you listen. So if you are, and you as a producer also get paid in Bitcoin as people listen to your stuff, and they can chop it up and clip it up, and then you get paid for that as well. It's positive, incentive, reinforce. It's called Fountain FM. It's an app, and I definitely recommend it to all you. I don't get anything out of it except sats. You get sats, I get sats. We get paid for doing what we're doing. People just listening. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Right, I'm going to check that out, mate. Thank you for that one. I'm going to go home and buy some more Bitcoin as well. I'm going to sell all my fucking WEF bullshit Ethereum, and I'm going to buy myself some more Bitcoin. But bro, thank you so much for coming on today, mate. Always an absolute pleasure. And we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Catch you soon, mate. Guys, thank you for listening to today's episode. Before you go, I just want to tell you about an event I've got going on the 14th of March in London. It's with Leveson Wood, and we also have a panel of guests. It's discussing the book that we've got coming out in March called Escape from Kabul. It's all about the events in Kabul, the fall of Kabul. We interviewed everyone from private soldiers holding the riot shields to Defense Secretary, Foreign Secretary, Afghan refugees, American Marines. We've got all kinds of interviews in there, guys. It was a real privilege of a book to work on, and looking forward to bringing it to the RGS Theatre in Kensington. If you're interested in coming along to that, there's a link down in the show notes. In the price of the ticket, you'll get a hardback copy of the book. Hopefully we do some kind of meet and greet pub stuff going on as well afterwards. Depends what time, if we've got any press going on in the morning. If there's no media commitments next morning, then I shall be out drinking, and it'd be great to see you. So check it out, guys. Link to the show notes, 14th of March, London. Thanks for listening today. Catch you next time. We love you. Bye.